Thank you very much, Stephen, for taking your time out and talking to us today. We are going to discuss a very important issue, which is climate crisis that Pakistan is going through, and we have lost lots of lives, livestock, crops, and people are going through immense problems even now, and the scale is huge. We have never seen that in Pakistan yet, although we have had one flood in 2010 as well, but this one is even bigger. It's much more challenging. It is so devastating that government does not have resources to deal with it, and this is the experience and that we are having right now. As a think tank, how do you anticipate climate-driven change? And what is the role of think tanks in mitigating the issues resulting from climate crisis?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor, for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be with you. And just to let you know, I'm the director of the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation in Morocco, which is a program in the Maghreb region in Northern Africa. And yes, we attended together a conference and talked, amongst other issues, about climate change. We, as a think tank, take lots of measurements and are very concerned about the development. You mentioned the natural disasters caused by climate change in Pakistan. I'm very aware, and I've followed the news of the flooding this year, but also you mentioned 2010, which was a very problematic event. We have installed as the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, which is an internationally or global think tank based in Germany, in Berlin. We have about programs in about 120 countries worldwide. My colleagues in Asia, Africa, in the MENA region, Europe, and America are working together globally on climate and energy and environment issues. Just to give you also an insight, we have here our regional program on climate and energy for the Maghreb region. Here it's quite the opposite. In fact, Maghreb has one of the driest years since also recording of weather. So in particular here in Morocco, we have still waiting for rain. Like it's very dry. The reservoirs are empty. So we are trying to exchange in international conferences to contribute to collecting knowledge and having experts exchanging about solutions and what are the causes of these issues.
So, like, I mean, when we talk about climate crisis and the vulnerability of developing countries in particular, and in this COP27, we saw that there was this one resolution was passed to support these vulnerable countries like Pakistan and Nigeria, who went through the climate-driven change this year. Do you think it is going to happen soon enough for the affected victim to get the relief that they need sooner than later?
I mean, it was difficult, and the COP27 had to be extended to find an agreement. Not all countries agreed to immediate support to countries such as Nigeria, Pakistan. I hope and that mechanisms will be found to support immediate causes, or like to find solutions and support countries that are affected by weather phenomena or climate related events. I mean, we live in a time of holy crisis. Like it's not just the climate. We have the war in the Ukraine. We have energy crisis in most countries. Prices of energy went up. And obviously this affects all countries, but the developing countries much more. What is also affecting developing countries is the agricultural sector that is heavily dependent on weather and climate, but also circumstances of life and how to manage things are mainly affected by countries that are tend to be more vulnerable on climate related events. I'm not an expert in seeing what can be what will be done in the next weeks or months in support in order to support countries that are more vulnerable. But what I've seen by following recent negotiations and events and what has been reported, I can see that these overshadowing crises, in particular in Europe, are probably not fast in the solutions that countries such as Pakistan would need.
So, when we talk about funding these crises, funding affected people of these crises, there is a debate who should chip in, whether it should be only the developed countries like the Western countries of Germany, France, England, USA, North American countries, or should it also include emerging economies like China and India? So, as coming from a global think tank, what is your stance? How would we manage the funds to help and support the victim of climate crisis?
Yes, the German government was very firm on involving every partner and every nation, including emerging countries, to that mechanism. Unfortunately, what we missed is, of course, a more in-depth discussion about the causes, like who is causing climate change right now? What are the nations that have the highest carbon dioxide per capita or per country? So we should not only talk about funding and how to support countries that are in need, but also to see how we can talk about, to limit or reduce the causes of climate change. We have the unfortunate situation that we work on a different timeline. Whatever is done now will take effect in 20, 30 years. So we have a shifted timeline, which makes these negotiations more complicated. And as we all know, politics in countries is way more short-sighted. Countries look at the next elections, but they don't look much further. So that's one of the issues we need to deal with. We all agree that climate change is affecting every country. There was a significant flood in Germany in the past year. So that has also affected lots of people. But yes, we need to work on both sides. We need to support and we need to also find the causes and eliminate the causes for climate change.
And when we talk about carbon emission, and then there is this idea of taxing carbon emission or carbon tax that should be imposed on the countries who are emitting more carbon. So in that case, countries like Pakistan, which has less than 1% of carbon emission, and despite that, we are more vulnerable. In order to enhance or increase our economic growth, we will have to, that will be adding to our footprint, carbon footprint. How do we deal with that? Economic progress will increase more carbon emission, and that is what's needed in a country like ours. How do you think about it? How do you conceptualize it?
Yes, yeah, and that's the big dilemma we are all facing, and we have seen. If you look at the industrialization in the past decades in Europe or in Northern America, this was all based on carbon emission, or it was mainly based on carbon emission and increasing effects on climate and energy. And still industry is one of the greatest parts of developing and developed countries, societies that causes carbon dioxide emission. So I mean, I think what we need to all work together. We don't need to burn coal. I mean, there is more alternative energy sources. You can find better technologies. We have better catalysts to clean air. We have technologies to get energy from solar power or wind power. So there are better solutions. Yes, they cost more money, but that's probably also what we need to negotiate more in these international events, such as the COP summits. So I think one of our best approaches could be to improve technology and improve quality of our interventions in industrializing or like in advancing economic powers.
So for countries like Pakistan, even if we have new technologies or clean energy possible in the world, it is much more expensive and it's not affordable. How would we take up this challenge? How would we address this challenge?
I mean, yes, we probably need to, and then COP is also in other summits. There has been a much more globalized economy, meaning ideas, technologies can be better exchanged. So, for example, if there's a new invention, not every country needs to reinvent the same idea. So we should exchange those ideas much more faster and maybe not think only about economic profit, but also think about profit for the environment. If we have new technologies, so those things can be cheaper for Pakistan and other countries to implement them at the beginning, not just start with an old technology and increasingly trying to improve it. So I think this is one of the ideas we should look more into, and then of course have international organizations supporting clean energy much more than before, and this is probably also like a new role of international organizations to look at those. And then of course countries that can afford should take more part and should take more initiatives to support countries such as Pakistan.
We have seen COVID-19 since 2019, and it is a global phenomena which has lowered economic activities and economic growth all over the world. World is going through a financial crisis as well, and we would probably be going towards a global recession. Considering the condition of the economy and the increasing climate crisis that we are seeing, how would we be able, a global economy or global players, how would they be able to spend money on mitigating or overcoming climate crisis?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, and obviously, if some companies might not think the same thing, and some countries, as we have seen at COP27, do not have the same agenda, and rather look at their national politics and not international outcomes of climate and energy policies. I mean, I think we need stronger leadership. We need countries pushing more forward and also pulling countries, in clean energy, and then those. So that's, I think, instead of going back to our national borders. Unfortunately, COVID-19, and this is to your question, has shown lots of countries fall back to more national patterns and did not look internationally. You know, which country has more masks, or like which country has a better vaccination, showed that, you know, sometimes countries thought, okay, some governments thought my country first, and not, you know, where the most needs of masks or vaccinations was. So I think we need to go back to a more international regime of, you know, getting into exchange and seeing how we can prepare every country for the future. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have the cleanest rivers or the best air in one country if, you know, countries in the neighborhood are, you know, still using carbon emission, or like still using nuclear power, and you know, we all know the risk that stems from those industries.
And what does it take to plan to deal with climate crisis, and what is the role of think tanks in doing that?
Yeah, so we, as a global think tank, leading think tank as well, because of our network and our work, and I can, you know, report about our projects in the Maghreb region. But I think our role is definitely to support exchange, also talk to policymakers. You know, what can we do? What are the effects, and how do we prepare maybe also experts to be more and better represented in international exchange opportunities, such as summits or such as bilateral negotiations, in order to see, okay, what can we do? How can we convince investors to look at countries such as Pakistan, such as Morocco? I think this can be a role of a think tank, provide knowledge, gather knowledge. I mean, it's, you know, we all know you work in academia, and how difficult it is to get good data to actually confirm our ideas and, you know, prepare better policies. And that's what I see as the role of a think tank, but also of universities, and of course the civil society that is pretty active in Pakistan. It's pretty active in the Maghreb region as well.
When we are anticipating the future of climate-driven change, do you think using data and creating only probable story is the way to go, or should we expand our imagination or horizon and include other possible futures too, like our preferred future or plausible future or possible future?
Well, as we, so we as Adenauer Foundation work in collaboration with ISESCO, which is an international organization that is working on science, culture, and education in the Islamic world. So the headquarters is here in Rabat. We have done a number of workshops and conferences on possible future planning and scenario planning. We work together with the Strategic Center of ISESCO, which is a think tank. And so this is one of our missions, and that's what we have done. And you know, recently worked on issues such as climate, youth, but also on education. We don't know the outcomes, and as we discussed at these think tanks summits, we don't know the future. We can prepare with like different tools which we have established. I'm glad also, you know, there's a number of initiatives coming out of ISESCO regarding that. And I think, yes, data is pretty clear, like we can know, but like the problem are the different timelines, and that's one of the issues that makes our work difficult. We don't know when things are happening, or we don't know when, you know, our reaction to a certain event will take place, or like, you know, these are the things. I mean, we know what the temperature will be in Barcelona in 20 years, or like we know the temperature in Pakistan, and probably we can look at at risks, and see, how flooding will affect countries, in particular countries that are closer to border. Bangladesh, for example, this is a country we know already that there will be more issues with floodings. But of course, we don't know. Lots of facts are uncertain, and that's what we need to inform ourselves better and need to find out what we can do and see, what is the local knowledge as well. Maybe a farmer in rural Pakistan, maybe there's information we don't know yet, and maybe that can help us as well to shape the future.
And when we talk about the stakeholders in climate-driven change, we have the developed countries, developing countries included in it, but somehow the feeling among the developing countries people is that we do not have a lots of say, and because of that they don't seem to exercise their agency. For instance, people affected by climate-driven floods in Pakistan do not have much of a choice. They are without food, without shelter, without any medicine. And how do you empower them? How do you increase their agency? How do you build their capacity? What can think tanks, global think tanks like yours, is doing in that regard?
We have multiple challenges. Of course, we have the impacts of those climate-related events. We do have the causes, like, we have migration, we have poverty, we have loss of means and lives in the worst case. So what we need to do is give them a voice. First of all, we need to also convince national governments, like, those are the, officially elected representatives of all people in the country. So obviously, this needs to come up on, national agendas. And then in the next step, it needs to, be in an international context to negotiate and be, at those summits at the United Nations, at regional organizations, to put up this on the agenda, because affected by climate-related, we are all, affected by those. Some of them are much more, and then some of them are less. But that's definitely, I think, also the role of think tanks, of universities, of political stakeholders, to put up, the voice for everyone, and also make sure everyone, is on board and, knows how, these things can affect, and before things are too late. And that's, when already things are starting, such in areas that are affected by heavy floods. This is too late.
And when the think tanks are projecting future stories or building future scenarios, what is the role of imagination in anticipating futures?
Yeah. So we work with the Strategic Center of ISESCO on different approaches. Scenario planning is, I would say, probably the most known and strongest tool in, predicting things. As you know, it's always like also looking what happened in the past, what is the role of the present situation, and then how we go from there. What are the worst cases? What are the best cases? And then, shape policies. Sometimes it needs to go beyond that. We need to even have probably more creative tools on imagination, on what can happen, what can we do, and make people aware of this, and publish those, and tell policymakers and responsible people on those potential outcomes. I think this is our role, and this is what we can do. There's the worst case, there's the best case. So we need to also discuss all options and possibilities. And I think this is the role what we can do and what we should do.
This brings me to the last question I have. It is about how hopeful should a Pakistani victim of this climate-driven change should be considering all the scenarios today that is played out in front of them, how hopeful they should be for a better tomorrow?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I want to be I want to give an optimistic answer, and I think hope is sometimes all we have. But I strongly believe in development of technology to prevent, avoid, and make even climate or maybe reverse even climate damage that has been done to our climate environment. I think also resilience is a strong factor in countries, which includes also adaptation to new situations. Also changing, if I talk about agriculture, maybe not all crops are suitable for the land that is currently used for agriculture. So there's also, a learning process, development of crops and of technology, as I mentioned. We have, discussions about green hydrogen electricity, like electricity produced by green hydrogen, which is advancing progressively. I don't know the Pakistani context that well, so I can't predict, or I can't say what how flood affected areas in Pakistan, what will happen. It's the time frame of the next flood. Is it coming soon? Is it like again in 12 years? So we need to see, and hopefully, science and knowledge will, improve to predict potential patterns. But yes, I think hope is there. At least from my perspective, and then of course, the belief in technology and science advancement in making the world better.
Thank you so much, Steffen, for taking your time out and enlightening us on such important topic as that of climate crisis, which is impacting the whole world. And we know that human beings and their activities are responsible for it. And the only way we can deal with it is to collaborate together to overcome this challenge. I appreciate your presence today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and all my best regards to Pakistan. Thank you.